What is up, Tyler?
Yo! Man.
Beautiful bastard. So good to see you, man.
Right? It's been ages.
Yeah, man. 13 years?
Has it really been that long?
Yeah, man. We're old fucks.
Right? Jesus.
So for those listening, Tyler and I, we met down in Orlando. We were going to school, and he's from Alaska, and I had never met anybody from that Pacific nor that Northwest before, and it was really cool. Like I think I've heard horror stories, about the school, but I think like our starting group that was in there was just like a group of incredibly solid people from like a really diverse cultural background.
I would most definitely agree. I mean, I still keep in touch with a few guys, and I mean, literally, yeah, that does sum it up. It's definitely an eclectic group.
Hell yeah. So, you're, if not my favorite, one of my favorite, or at least former people to watch as far as progressive political analyses on social media. And like you and I would have, conversations, back and forth, unpacking ideas and like getting different perspectives. And I really appreciated, like ever since I was little, having people that, you could talk ideas with. And I gotta say, I miss seeing your rants and ramblings on social media.
Yeah, ramblings describes them well. Yeah, it gets to the point to where it builds up so much that I just have to vomit it out. And I started using Facebook. I didn't really use Facebook a lot before. I guess I don't even know where it began. Really, I mean, Trump really brought it out of me. But I mean, I'd had moments before where I like to, free my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I just deleted my Facebook just because I couldn't take it anymore. It was kind of beating on my mental health a little bit. But
do you think it has something to do with everything being text and rhetoric rather than like conveying ideas like verbally?
I think for me personally, what really was the hardest for me is seeing people kind of regurgitate what they were seeing or reading in their bubble.
Right.
And I mean, that goes for both sides, the left and the right. And it was frustrating for me to see these people not applying any critical thought and just, saying, well, this or that. And it's like, okay, let's have a conversation about it. And then they immediately shut down.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what I loved about talking with you is that, we were able to talk about these things and, a non-judgment. Well, I mean, there's judgment, obviously. But
yeah. Not judgment of character. You're supposed to judge the ideas.
Right.
But yeah, I think, man, like it's become almost a pleasurable poison, like the toxicity on social media. Because of this, you see these new religions popping up, right? Where what seems to be, for me anyways, from what I see, there's two symptoms of TDS, where you've got Trump devotion syndrome and Trump derangement syndrome. And when people in those bubbles aren't willing to sort of speak with other rational people and just sort of say like, hey, this is my perspective on it. What is your perspective on it? Whenever you don't have that, that's when we've gotten into sort of a dogmatic approach to politics. And kind of like what you said, it just really turns you off whenever you're into, critical thinking or intellectualism, to see people just blindly follow something because it's comforting, right? And they get that validation feedback loop from social media where you don't have to question anything. You get all those dopamine hits from 10 people that agree with you or more, but usually all you need is just like a couple, and then you feel some sort of validation and connected with a group. And I never once got that from any of your posts. Like, even when people would agree with you, you would still chime in and be like, well, yeah, but you're missing the point, Chuck. It's
it's so hard for me to articulate, try to get it out of my brain the way that I feel, because all my arguments have all these counter arguments, and you can't just dive into my brain or somebody else's brain to really pick out the supporting factors for the idea. And I've noticed too on social media that you'll say one point, and then within a paragraph, it's no longer about that point at all. It's on to something else.
Yeah.
So it's like a loop, but a weird, just kind of wobbly road that nothing, ever gets achieved, because we're just talking about something new every time.
No, it's the it's like an old adage, or maybe it's probably either like Dr. Seuss or Maya Angelou, one of the two, that said that most people will tend to listen to respond, not to listen how to think. I'm paraphrasing poorly, obviously, but like they have conversations not to learn a sense of understanding from where the other person's coming from, but to prove them wrong and themselves right. And kind of like what you said, when you start looking at some of these threads where you start talking about ideas, and then about a third of the way through, it's no longer about the idea, then it's just personal ad hominem attacks. And it's like, well, fuck, man, I thought we were talking about, like, tax reform. Now you just, like, called the dude a homophobe, and, I'm not really sure the two are really related at all, And it's, I don't think it's prosperous for us as critical thinkers, nor as a society, but that it kind of seems that is going to be the religion of the 22nd century, like looking 100 years from now, where people will have Trump and AOC up on like pedestals, where they'll, of different sects of religion, where these cults of personality will they'll start to manifest as deities down the road. And I think we're kind of already seeing that with these TDS facets.
Absolutely. I think we're losing the art of agreeing to disagree. It's basically, if you don't agree with me, you're wrong. And I see that rising to where we can't have these conversations, because either people get too emotional, or they get, there's a million things that derails an actual proper conversation.
Yeah.
And it's 2020, man.
2020.
Interesting times we live in.
Yeah. Everybody can agree that nobody agrees on anything in 2020.
Amen.
So, you're one of the two people I wanted to have on after a debate, but before the election, because I want to get perspectives of people that are pro the president and anti the president, and just going out on a wild limb here. I'm from our conversations, I'm deducing you are not a fan of Donald Trump as president.
I am not a Trump fan.
My psychic abilities grow stronger every day, Tyler. Every day, my friend.
Yeah, I just can't. I tried. When he got elected, my wife is a very solid Democrat and liberal. She grew up in Wisconsin, Janesville, where Paul Ryan is from. And so it's always been a swing state and purple state. And so she grew up with politics in her home and everything else. So I was never really exposed to politics like that. I grew up in Alaska, where the presidential race was already called before they counted our votes. I grew up pretty disenfranchised. So
I could see how that would make a young man disenfranchised with his voting power.
Yeah, exactly. So for the longest time, I didn't participate in politics for the specific reason that I saw that it was so broken that, I apathetic.
Right.
And, I have another buddy, Ray, that I used to work with that, you have to vote. That's all you have and everything else. And I mean, after multiple conversations, he finally swayed me to, no matter how apathetic you are or how much you don't believe change is possible through the current system, which, I mean, I still don't think is possible. I mean, I'm still going to participate in what we do have. And when it's time to burn it all down, maybe I'll be there too.
I was talking with one of my buddies about this, that it's not about which of the puppets you think, right? It's always about what's important to you as a voter, right? So I find, just personally, a rather disgusting approach to it are the people they're kind of like Jesus freaks, except for either the DNC or the RNC, where
Absolutely.
They want you to go and vote, and they talk about how important it is, but the asterisk on it is that you need to go and vote like them. And I found even people that I thought were, buddies of mine, whenever we would have this, I'm like, oh yeah, I went and voted. Oh, cool. Yeah, so you voted for X, Y, and Z? It's like, well, no, I voted for A, B, and C. And then it's just like, well, how could you do that? It's like, well, because that's what I aligned with. You know what I mean? Right. So like, everybody has different electoral scruples, I guess, for lack of a better term. You know what I mean? So like with some people, it ultimately comes down to Roe v. Wade. And some people, it ultimately comes down to the Second Amendment, and they look to see which of those parties with those wedge arguments, right, is more aligned with theirs, and that's usually how they'll vote down the line. Now, I personally don't agree with that style of voting, but if that's what's most important to you, then that's how you should vote,
Absolutely.
What would you say were some of the factors that drove you to be more towards voting for Biden than for Trump?
So, we touched on so many things there that I wanted to. So, I mean, when Trump got elected, I was give him a chance. Maybe a businessman is what the country needs. Maybe, the change to shake the system. I mean, all those things. Give the man a chance. I was that in 2016. Once everything, was said and done. And it was the constant reminders of how self-serving and how not for the American people he was that really shook me. And then I had a conversation with my mom to touch what you were just talking about last night, actually, over dinner. We were talking about the debate and everything else, and one of the things I see in the left is their automatic talking point of, well, Kamala. You may not like Biden, but it's Kamala, and that really frustrates me because I will absolutely vote for Biden in this election, and I don't think Biden is a great candidate. I think he's too old. I think that the whole talks of dementia and everything else. You think
it holds some water?
I wouldn't go that far, but I would absolutely say he's in a cognitive decline. Just in general, they're both terrible candidates. We're right back to 2016, and then it goes back to what you were saying about the RNC and the DNC. And I absolutely despise the DNC, but
that's something we can both wholeheartedly agree on.
Absolutely.
From somebody who is one of these, I guess you say a neo-woke Southerner that sort of looks at the history of the South and is like, well, who was in charge back then? Who was running the show down here? It's not what the TV man's talking about, and that's what sort of got me off on it. But anywho, I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, you didn't interrupt, and I love your freeform style, and it's just kind of riffing off each other, and I hope I get all my thoughts out clearly and understandably, because there's just so much to talk about, and there's so much going on, and it's just
Yeah, but back to you were talking about Kamala being a focus point.
You know, exactly. So that is the left kind of. Well, if you don't like Biden, you know, there's Kamala, so you know it's okay. And I guess I feel personally that that's kind of like a out instead of holding the system accountable. Like, well, okay, Biden's a terrible candidate, but right now we're having this discussion about the president, you know, who's going to be the next president of the United States, and we're talking about a vice presidential candidate now is why the reason, and not holding the system accountable for why that's acceptable. That shouldn't be acceptable. We should have an acceptable candidate.
I agree with you because
and it's just frustrating
with all of the you know, the president's faults and even the subjective faults that just matter to me. I would much rather have Donald Trump than Mike Pence running the show.
Oh, Jesus. Literally. I agree with that, you know, and I think about 2017, 2018, when, you know, it became clear to me that Trump was not the answer for what I believe would be best for America. You know, and then people would make jokes, you know, well, you know, someone's just going to knock him off or anything else, you know, and then you'd have someone on the line, oh, that'd be great. And I'm thinking to myself, well, why would you say that, number one? Because you know who the vice president is? It's Mike Pence. And if you're on the left and you know who Mike Pence is, you might not want him sitting, you know, maybe you'd rather have Trump in front because, holy. So
I think that would be the most uncomfortable poll you could put anybody like left of center through. Would be like, all right, would you rather have Donald Trump and, you know, everybody like groans and like boos and hisses, or Mike Pence, and then just shell shock drops over him like, oh my God, it got worse.
Oh,
how did it get worse? But the
we're really going to spike those Google searches to move to Canada.
Fuck that. I'm not going anywhere. I made it this far in 2020. I'm going to see what's up. But now to your point about like, yeah, watching the vice presidency. Okay, well, even if we're just talking about just their personalities, all right. Honestly, I will give Kamala the Cop Harris the gold medal in as far as the most approachable and affable personality as far as being a politician goes. You know, it's definitely not going to be the two old dudes who were playing some bastardized version of American Gladiators the other night, which is weird. They didn't have jousting sticks. They didn't have the Nerf cannon. They're just shouting insults at each other.
Oh, fuck me, it was terrible.
I thought it was hilarious, dude. That was solid television. I laughed.
That's what you got out of it? I mean, you know,
what else am I going to get out of it? I'm not going to go into this nihilistic, depressed mode where I'm just like, oh my God, we're doomed. We're already doomed, okay, gang? The apocalypse is coming. We're all going to die eventually. So just quit worrying about it. You vote how you want to vote. You're choosing which team of assholes you want to manage the descent into the volcano. You know what I mean? Which inept amputee do you want driving the bus off the cliff? Do you want Donald Trump and his team or Joe Biden and his team? So I think if we're approaching it from the viewpoint of like, oh gosh, it's all doomed. Well, I mean, that's politics, baby. It's always this doomsday fear porn and hope porn that are sort of just sprinkled out there. But whenever you're able to unpack these ideas and sort of, you know, brush all the superficial stuff off, then you can sort of look and be like, okay, now how doomed are we if we choose this one? How quickly is our demise going to happen? So I found using that realistic approach just makes, if nothing else, my depression is minimal from being...
Well, I might take a page out of your playbook then.
Dude.
I need some of that in my life. Hey, but to be honest, George Carlin, I mean, I wish he was around to see this. I wish I could hear his commentary on it.
I wish I could see the suicide note he would have left behind after seeing how terrible 2020 got.
Oh, fuck. It'd be peak 2020.
Oh, my God. What if it was just like, he just wrote, fuck it, love George, and like that.
Right, but what I loved is how he talked. I already gave up. I give up. I don't have a stake in it. I mean, I think in his last interview, I really recommend it if you haven't watched it. It's a few hours long, and I mean, it's awesome. And he talks a bit about it, and what he's talking about is, I don't let myself go to that place because, I feel like it's already over and I'm detached from it. So I feel that. But at the same time, I don't want to be that cynical.
Right.
Even though that I probably am. Oh, it's terrible to vocalize. Well,
I think that if all you have is a shred of hope, it's still a shred of hope, right? I mean, for Pete's sake, even though he has constituents, a game show host made it to be the president a few years ago, and we're still feeling the ripple effects of that. You know what I mean? So
so let's brag about the highest TV ratings ever. Because that's what
Tyler, clearly that's our most important thing we need to talk about right now.
Well, absolutely. Let's talk about those alternative realities that America lives in right now.
It is weird, though. Well, I mean, point being to that is that if all we have is a vote, if that is the only hope, and though, yeah, in the grand scheme of some things, it may seem fruitless, but it still counts towards it. So even if it's just a microcosm of change, or rather the potential to change, like it's still there. You know what I mean? So
unless you live in Alaska.
Well, let me get your thoughts on this since we're talking election. The Electoral College. What do you feel about it?
I think the Electoral College is outdated. I feel like if there was, see, this is where we get into like the politics. I don't feel like I'm educated enough to really have solid opinions on it because I don't know enough of the nuances. Because every change you make, it has consequences. If you don't know what they could be. Right. So, I think the Electoral College has proven time and time again that it doesn't work. I believe that the time we live in, popular, a true democracy is popular vote. Now, back to Trump. Trump hated the Electoral College until it served him.
Yeah, until he won.
and so exactly. So it's just one of these things that it definitely, smarter people than I need to look at it. And I mean, I'm a wholehearted believer in democracy. I'm a wholehearted believer in the fact that we can live together as human beings by agreeing of majority rule. And if you don't like that majority rule, you go somewhere else. So I don't know. I don't. I'll let you chime in on that.
Well, I used to be very against the Electoral College because of the principle of one person, one vote. For lack of a better term, that it's
absolutely.
So, while I do believe in that, if we're talking about on a national level, it gets kind of hairy, and so I think it's a set of checks and balances that while we still can improve upon it, I think that having something like it there is beneficial. So, for example, in the popular vote, let's say, just in theory, that the 10 most populous cities in America all vote the same way. All of them. In theory, or even let's say that if we take the 20 most popular, or even 30 most popular, however many, we've got, I don't know how many metropolitan areas in America. I would wager somewhere probably around 10,000 or so, if not more. But if they're just in these little kingdoms, these little hubs that are spread out, then it's not democracy on a geographic scale, right? Because you're then saying that how we run the country or choose to run the country in these megaplexes is how it needs to be done elsewhere. And as people who have both lived in cities and rural life, they are two totally different Americas as far as...
Absolutely. Being born and raised in Alaska, I mean, I went to school in Florida, lived in California, lived in Seattle. I live in Wisconsin now, so I tell everyone the grass isn't greener on the other side. There's always pros and cons to everywhere, and I mean that's where I think that back to the popular vote and having the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can't think of the name of it at the time to where you put your vote of your first pick, second pick, third pick, fourth pick, fifth pick. Mm-hmm. I think that would be a good way to spread the vote out in a more equitable way.
That'd be interesting. So if you delegate, say you have your top 4 choices, and then spot 1 would get 4 points, spot 2 would get 3, and that'd be interesting. What I'd like to see is, I think the big problem with the Electoral College is that in some states the electorates can vote however they want. They don't have to listen to what the populace of the state voted for. So I think that should be the rule with the Electoral College. Should be whatever the electorate in the state votes for is the popular vote. That wins the electoral seat for that state. I think that is a better way to handle it. I do still think that the idea of having some sort of geographical way to make sure that it's not just one part of the country calling the shots. And my rationale behind that is, if you just sort of look at the 19th century and what was going on in America, there's a lot of nefarious stuff that was going on, and a fair amount of it was split up geographically, right? So I mean, like everything south of the Mason-Dixon line was had a completely different moral compass as far as an economy goes than anything north of that line.
Well, okay, so we're talking about how our vote should be distributed, right? Should it be more, in the populous areas? Should it be more spread out to, where everyone gets a fair shake? But I feel like we're missing a point. Are you familiar with tweedism?
Tweetism?
Tweedism.
Tweedism. No, sir, I am not.
Okay, so tweedism, and I'm going to butcher the hell out of it.
That's okay. I do it all the time on my show. So.
Perfect. So tweedism, Tweed was a politician way back when. There's a Harvard professor that explains this. And the way it's explained, that tweedism, it doesn't matter. As long as I do the nominating, I don't care who does the electing. And that is, I feel, at the core, our biggest problem at the moment, is that we have this illusion of choice. Now, do you think that if we had a popular vote right now, that either Trump or Biden would be the popular nomination for each party? Trump, maybe, because he has a strong base. But Biden, I can tell you absolutely, I don't believe that he won fairly. I don't believe that, I believe DNC. I believe he was put in directly by the DNC. So
I agree with you on that. Whenever you see the stuff that happened with Bernie 2 cycles in a row, right? 2 election cycles. Right. So like I gave to Sanders' campaign in 2016, and whenever I saw he was running again, I was like they're gonna just sucker his fans, man. They're hustling them.
Yeah.
And that's what ended up happening when you see, what was a Super Tuesday, that they pulled pretty much everybody but Elizabeth Warren, I think, was the only other progressive that was up there. And
hey, I'm a big Warren fan, by the way.
Are you?
Big Warren fan. I am. Just because and I know we've had this conversation a little bit before, but I just want to throw that in there that, like, the debate last night, if Warren was out there compared to, I feel like there needs to be somebody that wants it. Oh, Trump is going to play his game. I don't understand why we have to continually put politics in a box. If the game is going to be changed, change the game. You want to have a talk. You want to get loud. You want to puff up your chest. You want to get serious about shit. Talk about shit. You want to bring up families and this and that. You want to go toe to toe. Go toe to toe. And I feel like, and that's where it goes back to Biden's cognitive decline that I noticed. And, very disheartening for me personally, because it's frustrating knowing that I have to give my vote to somebody that I don't full-heartedly stand behind.
Right.
But in the end, what I stand behind is the true belief that Trump is not the answer. I believe that he has caused so much more turmoil, so much more divide, and I mean, the list goes on. So I digress.
But Kamala, it makes sense why the DNC would have chosen her, because they were pushing her hard early until Tulsi Gabbard shut her down at that one debate, and then they quit inviting Tulsi back to the debates. But I mean, it goes to what you're saying, where it's like, okay, if we're really like having the people choose the nominee and like going from there, instead of, hey, here are some choices we picked for you, go ahead and see which one of these you like best. Try them on.
Exactly. Try them on.
Try them on. See which one fits you best.
Here's the bag of assholes. You can play with them.
Yeah.
We're still gonna pick which asshole is gonna be there.
So what?
Not gonna lie, I'm jealous of that little vaporizer you got there.
It's top notch. It's
top notch, huh?
Top notch. Yeah, usually whenever have in-person conversations, if the guest smokes or something like that, I just open up the back door and I just let them smoke, man.
Oh, that's proper. But at the same time, you let people smoke in your house? The whole smoking indoors, man, I can't do it.
It's one room, and it's right by a back door, so I keep it aired out. My house does not smell. I stopped smoking tobacco, I want to say like March or April. It was one of those like COVID existential crises where I was like, oh, well, I need to get my life in order, and I'm not getting any younger. But it's the next step will be eventually getting rid of nicotine altogether. But
I used to vape, and then I used to do both. I've quit multiple times. I actually just started again. I had quit for since February.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually pretty sure I got COVID. I mean, I didn't. This was back in early February, but I mean, I was laid up. I literally had to be dying to go to the hospital. I had to go to the hospital.
Oh wow!
And anyways, long story short, I hadn't had a smoke since then, and then it finally broke down. It's terrible goddamn habit. Hate it.
I say it and tobacco and sugar are probably the the worst things that like you can just get. You don't have to go see a doctor to get cigarettes or a Monster. Hell, you don't even have to be in a.
Don't you dare talk bad about sugar.
You don't even have to be an adult to go and get a Monster. You can send a toddler into a gas station and be like, "Hey, Timmy, go in there and get us a couple of Java Monsters. Here's $8. Keep the change."
Keep the change, buddy. That had never crossed my mind ever until now.
Yeah,
and that's a legitimate thought there.
I think that. See, my whole thing with like I've always liked politics. I didn't really start getting into them till like about 2015, 2014. That's whenever I was sort of like trying to I was coming off of Adderall and, amphetamines, so my brain was working for the first time in like 6 years. And I was like, let's go back and revisit some of these ideas. But I've always liked the nuance when it comes to politics and debate and discussing ideas to sort of figure out, well, why do I believe this? Why, you're talking about, you start unpacking some ideas, and it's like, well, fuck, man, I don't think that, like, this person really speaks for me, but, I mean, I think it's, not to use a cliche, but it's the lesser of two evils. So, like we've talked about before, like in 2016, after Bernie somehow bowed to the DNC, even though they were screwing him out of the vote, like, on election day, I threw a proverbial middle finger, as it's known, and voted for Trump. And it wasn't because I was like yeah, he's going to do it. It was because I absolutely despise the Clintons, and though I can thank them because their journey, or excuse me, their journey through crime is kind of what helped further wake me up with that, and the WikiLeaks and the Podesta emails. And even though I know that's more conspiratorial stuff than politics, I mean, they're still, like, connected pretty deeply. So what I couldn't understand is, like, I had people that I knew that were all of a sudden calling me, like, really despicable names because I didn't go out and vote for Hillary Clinton whenever I started talking about, well, these were my reasons why. It's not that I'm, like, supporting the other person. It's that I felt betrayed as somebody who grew up liberal, that it came down to like this. So, like, that was what it was for. But to ideologues, they don't care what your reason is for voting. They don't care what my reason is for voting. You either toe the line or you get on the other side.
And that's my frustration with the left.
Yeah, man. It's what drove me to be, what was the 8 values? Progressive conservative was how I landed. I've never identified as conservative, but now, like, I kind of, like, with certain things, it's like, well, yeah, I agree with these assholes, just because these assholes on the left have sort of, like, formed this new woke religion where it's like, well, no, man, you can believe whatever you want to believe, but this is my land. Get the fuck off my property. Amen. I believe in the right to say that this is mine and you cannot have any. You cannot tell me what to do with it. And that's not traditionally a conservative principle. But with a lot of things now that I think has to do with our Constitution, you see more constitutionalists that are right of center than you are seeing them that are left of center. And, like, that worries me because I've spent most of my life being left of center. And
okay, so I have to interrupt.
Sure.
So, talking about left, center, right, I feel like as Americans, we keep ourselves in the bubble of believing, well, whatever America is the left, center, or right. But if you look at other countries and you look at their left and you look at their center and you look at their right, like, Biden is a prime example. Biden would probably be a center right in most countries.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting to add that dynamic to your thought process. And I definitely do. And I also fall very conservative on a lot of things. Like, I'm absolutely very pro 2A. I am. And so there's many things that ostracize me from the left. And it's frustrating that there isn't middle ground found, that you're either left or you're right.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you can say you're center, but that's hogwash.
Well, with center, the problem is with labeling like that is with certain things, it ends up being what's the term, milquetoast. You're a fence sitter or you're undecided. So all these things are sort of cast in, and then you throw independence in there as well. It's like, well, shit, man, I'm not undecided on a lot of things. It depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about the war on drugs, you'll find me on the left, like shaking my fist with them. If we're talking about the Second Amendment, no, I'm 2A all the way, so you're going to find me on the right, But whenever we start having these like you said, it's so Boolean, right? It's either you are here or you are there. There is no in between.
Get in the fucking box, Colter. Get in the box.
I can't do it.
I can't do it.
Just can't do it. The
Fit.
it has been like the most frustrating thing, because there's some people that like I love dearly, and like I know that they are incredibly intelligent and talented and individuals.
Amen. Goddamn amen.
And then it comes to like a certain thing with them, and if it's connected at all with the current state of American politics, and it has the T word, Trump, attached to it, then they get so just like, well, what's the instruction booklet here say? I have to find my reference. It's like, bro, he's a douchebag. I understand that. But if you're saying you don't like prison reform, I'm just sort of scratching my head. Like, I don't understand. Like, it's possible for shitty people to do good things. It's possible for politicians you dislike to have good points of view that you agree with. So, quick example on that, the latter of those, the recent Supreme Court ruling with the trans rights, that a job cannot discriminate you based on your gender identity, which I agree with that. Thumbs up all the way. Gorsuch, however he's the guy who wrote the decision on it. He's one of Trump's Supreme Court nominees. So, like, and I'll tell this to people, and you can just sort of see there's something clicking on them where in their brain it's like, oh, that is a good thing, but they can't. It's like asking a religious person a paradox that involves God not existing, and it's just a hypothetical, but you can tell that they're just like, well, no, that question actually, you can't even ask that question. It's like, what the fuck kind of answer is that? Like, that
fries the brain.
Yeah.
Fries the brain.
It's a bit maddening, though I can say that within 2020, I'm at least starting to see people sort of talk ideas with people they disagree with online. Now, granted, like we were talking about earlier, there's a lot of irrelevance and just like nasty words that are in there, but they're at least talking. You know, like 3 years ago, nobody was discussing anything.
Well, and I'll go back to when Trump got elected and everything.
Sure.
That was one of the things that I talked about was, hey, people are paying attention now. People that didn't used to pay attention are now paying attention.
Exactly.
Which is a great thing. And I mean, if you still talk to people, almost I'd say the majority of people don't follow politics at all. They couldn't name, their representative. I mean, hell, fuck, I'm one of them. Like, when it comes down to it.
I don't know those people's names.
Exactly. That's the thing. That's where the issues arise. And, we have checks and balances in place, but at this point in time, the checks and balances are so all over the place. Like the stimulus, the second stimulus package. There's people that are hurting right now.
Right.
There are people that can't afford anything right now. And stimulus is important. And who's tying it up? Well, you brought up, the Democrats, in one of our earlier conversations, not here.
Yeah, yesterday I think we were talking about it.
Right. The Republicans are holding it up. Well, if you look about it the other way, the Democrats are holding it up. So it's one of those things that it's just politics, man. And that's what's fucked up, I think, about America in general is that politics. It shouldn't be a game. It should literally be a human, empathetic experience of how can we all get along? How can we all make things work for everybody? And I'm not talking socialism. I'm not talking, give everyone the same fair shake. What I'm saying is that, everyone is included and everyone is thought of. And that's just not what we see.
No. And I totally agree with you on that, man. I think that our political process is important because we have to keep government in check. That is the point of American government, is to make sure that our individual liberties are not infringed upon by the mob, our neighbor, or the government itself. So what I don't like seeing in the current state of politics, it's all about the personality and not about the ideas, not about like what policies they're gonna enact, right? So like in Georgia, our election coming up, we've got 2 proposed amendments. One of them, I think, is about redistributing fireworks tax money or something. No idea what the hell is going on there. Way over my head with those esoteric tax laws. But the other one is an amendment that would end. It's not. They don't call it qualified. Hi, Bonkers. You gotta get down, buddy. They don't call it qualified immunity in Georgia. It's something like constitutional immunity or governmental immunity, something along those lines. But what it is, it's this law in Georgia that where if you believe you are wronged by the cops or a governmental authority in regards to your local, state, or federal constitution, that you can sue the government to have charges dropped or grievances filed or any of these things. And right now we can't do it. Like they're protected. The government is protected, and we are, in this sort of separate class that is not constitutional at all. And yet I don't know how long it's been that way, to be honest with you. But I think that is like, or not that particular amendment, but the focus, that should be what we need to sort of align ourselves with politically. Is like, well, yeah, like for some people, all they care about is what the person says, right? Some people don't give a shit about what the person says. They just care about the ideas and what they're doing. I think that's one reason why Trump's MAGA fan base is so loyal, because anytime he comes out saying something narcissistic or assholish in the news, they don't care. Like that's part of the reason why they wanted him, is because he's not a politician. Like that's so. Anytime I see these legacy media outlets running stories about like, can you believe what assholish thing Trump said? It's like, well, of course I can. You guys have just been shoving it.
What's the surprise?
Yeah.
He's gonna say, what do you mean? What? That's what he does. Don't be surprised.
Somebody had posted something, dude, the other night after the debate, and was like, well, I'm certainly not voting for him now. It's like, dude, I've seen nothing but like pro-left stuff from you from 3 years. Don't even pretend that you were even considering voting for Donald Trump when you've spent 3 years calling him a Nazi. I don't think you're all of a sudden like, well, he may be a Nazi, but he's got some interesting platforms on foreign policies.
Right. Yeah, no, he's jeez, man. My brain's just gonna shut down. There's times where my brain gets so filled with like at once with all the holy shit moments that I can't. Brain just says nope. I can't form a thought anymore because holy shit.
Well,
that's Trump for me.
I did want to talk about this as we were sort of talking the other day, where you shared that thread with me on Twitter, where this guy made he did a good job in his argument. Like I told you, I just sort of disagreed with it, but again, his logic was good as far as why he believed what he believed. But he was comparing Trump's America, or right populism, with fascism and the idea of like American exceptionalism and things like that. And it was interesting read. I'm glad you shared it with me. But would you care to unpack some of your ideas with that?
Yeah. So the thread basically breaks down how you could compare what we're seeing now to Mussolini, to Trump, or to to Hitler and to fascism in general. And I shared it with you because I know I'm going to have my personal biases, and it's going to be one of these things that you need to be able to have people in your life that gets you out of the bubble, that gets you out of your type of thinking, to get it from the other side. Because I could have just read that article, I could have been like, yes, I identify with that, yes, I believe that's the way it is, and accepted it as my reality. That's the way it is. And I shared it with you because I wanted to get your perspective of it. And I mean, I now look at it differently because I got your perspective on it. So, I mean, I won't break down the thread. I mean, maybe you can throw it in your comments or however you do your fancy podcast stuff. But it's a really good read, and I would encourage everyone to read it. And after having heard your arguments on it, I still would tend to lean more his point of view than yours. But it was the openness of being able to unpack the thoughts and not just accept them because that's the way that I believe.
Right. Well, it's confirmation bias is it's an easy road to take, you know.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't really get you any closer to truth, and that's one thing I've always valued about conversation with you, even going back to when we were younger, is that like we were always trying to be honest with our discussions, and with, like you said, if you can't get somebody else's perspective on something, then you're not really going to learn or grow anything. You're going to get better at knowing dogma, and you're going to get better at memorizing scripture. You know what I mean? And
exactly.
It's not a way to go about through it. I think my biggest critique, what the hell is that? That I had with it was the idea of exceptionalism, because if it's kind of a bit of a tightrope walk to unpack, but if it's, I think that it's kind of a bit dangerous to associate the idea of exceptionalism with being inherently fascistic, and which I know neither of us do. But again, if we're talking about how ideologues work and how somebody can take even something that should be great and sounds great on the surface, like anti-fascism, and turn into Antifa, then if you criticize it, then it makes it sound like you're pro-fa. Is that what it is? Pro-fa? Pro-fascist? Pro-fa?
Pro-fa.
Pro-fa?
We'll run with
it. But it's... I think there is something... There's something dangerous as well, though, about the closer we get towards you have to choose nationalism or globalism, because it's not going to fare well for anybody. That's kind of how the Revolutionary War kind of got started, was you had a global power, and then you had people saying, no, we don't want to follow your rules anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're headed. I hope we can pull it off, but I mean, we'll see what happens. But it's
we'll see what happens.
I mean, that's all you can do, right? Like,
right? Amen.
I mean, it's,
and I keep saying amen. By the way, I'm not a religious. I just like saying amen. It's a good word.
It is. It means yes. So I mean.
Yeah. Exactly. So okay. So exceptionalism.
Mm-hmm.
Trump wants exceptionalism taught in schools.
Right.
Is that correct? Is that a proper statement?
I mean, I would have to say that there's a lot of blankets in that statement, but yes, that is. It's kind of like the statement of Trump wanted to get rid of racial sensitivity training. It's like, well, No.
I've seen some of that racial sensitivity training, and holy shit,
Yeah.
it is off the wall bonkers.
Yeah, that's not racial sensitivity training. What they're talking about is a thing called critical race theory. Critical race theory is a big no from me. I do believe that it has bigoted ideological principles routed behind it. I think that a lot of it harkens back to anti-black propaganda that you saw in the American South in the late 1800s and early 1900s. It's just you just substitute the variable, right? So you take one demographic out, and now you're in the 21st century, and you put another one in. So
Right.
I don't like anything that tries to subjugate or quantify people based on quantify or qualify, one of those Q words, on somebody's race. I think that's inherently bigoted to do that. That it should be all about accepting people from different culture, and as far as everything else goes, whoever does the best job, that's how it should operate. That some of the stuff that's in that critical race theory, though, is seemingly anti-white, and maybe I'm biased since I'm like 99% white, but I'm just not a fan. If it were any other race that was put in there for the same principles, I wouldn't like it. There's this tendency we have with our past, and by our past I mean like as a nation, to sort of just rewrite it so it seems better than what it was. So we don't want to acknowledge that the way we got freedom was because our ancestors conquered this land and then kept conquering, and then set up shop to where it's like, okay, now we can stop being imperialistic with our borders. And then somebody else, I think it was Teddy Roosevelt, was like, yeah, we should just do it with the military instead. So then we had 100 years of that going on. So we have to be able to acknowledge certain things about the past, but this idea of the way to solve past discrimination is with present discrimination, suck my dick. That is not a logical way to solve it. I think there are logical ways to sort of handle, for lack of a better term, would be reparations, right? Which I have given reparations thought, and at this point in time, I am for reparations.
Really?
I am. I believe that the DNC should be dissolved with all of its funds, and it should be distributed equitably to every American descendant of slavery. I don't think that the notion of saying that it should be for black Americans is the right way to do it, because there were other descendants of slaves that were not black. There were also black slavers and black entrepreneurs that were not subjugated to this people as property ideology, right? So I don't think that doing it by, again, race or something on those terms is the right way to sort of start repairing the mistakes of our nation in the past. But I believe that taking the political party's money that was for this system and encouraged it, and they got money, like the DNC's got oodles of money. They've got more money than God.
Okay. But why just the DNC? Now, I know you've showed me a lot of the history I wasn't aware of about the DNC, and I mean, it is very eye-opening. But at the same time, now the RNC and the GOP and everything else.
Yeah, they've got different crimes of their own to answer for.
Exactly.
But
so,
as far as
the full dissolve, why don't we just dissolve the two-party system isn't working. It's failed us.
I think whenever, well, we'll get to that in a second. But with reparations, why the DNC and not the RNC is because the Republican Party were the abolitionists. In this discussion, as far as slavery and people as property, That's what founded the Republican Party, was a stance of anti-slavery. They were the abolitionist party. The DNC were the slavers. They were pro-KKK. They were pro-American Indian genocide. They were pro-Western expansion, being automatically slave states. They were pro...
People change, man. People change.
They do.
Ideologies change.
They certainly do. They certainly do, Tyler. However, whenever we're talking about our tax money being used for this, oh no, hard no. I think we need to audit all of our tax money. You and I were talking about this the other night.
Absolutely.
But as far as this goes, no, the reparations should not come from the taxpayers. Many of the taxpayers are American descendants of slaves. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So why is Peter Robin Paul, so I think that if that's the way that we need to do it, then that's the organization that was, they were all about it.
People accountable.
Yeah, so
you would hold them accountable.
As an organization, we can't hold individuals accountable for it, right? They're all dead.
Right.
All the slaves are dead. All the slave masters are dead. All we have are the ripple effects. But there are numerous companies that are still around and organizations that are still around that did profit off of it. So I think if we want to have a serious discussion, and I mean figurative about reparations, I'm all about it. But if we're going to be honest with it, as far as where's the money going to come from, that's my suggestion of where it needs to come from, is from the organizations and the companies and corporations that exist today that profited off of it directly in the 19th century.
Right. And you know what? I totally would agree with that analogy and the breakdown of it. I think that's a well thought out argument.
I know a fair amount of people, they're either like yeah, reparations across the board, and some people are like, staunchly like oh no, like nobody had anything to do with that, it's alive now. It's like, well, I mean, yeah, duh. I mean, no, you're right. None of us had fallen out of a pussy yet, Greg, when there were slaves. We had our fathers' balls hadn't been dropped yet because they didn't exist, right? So, I mean, yeah, I guess we were just a thought in the cosmos. But still, like we were saying earlier, man, like we want to make the world a better place. Like, I want America to be better tomorrow than it is today. And we seem to be regressing instead of progressing down that way. So, well, what would you say is if you could solve one problem in America right now? What would you say that problem is, and how do you think we could go about maybe solving it?
Oh, this is an easy one. I don't know about the solving it part.
Round up all the white people, get them in the town square, and line them up.
Line them up. No, the answer is easy for me, and that is you get the money out of politics. And I mean from the bottom to the top, get money out of politics.
It's like the super PACs and stuff like that.
The super PACs on down to you shouldn't be a rich old white man. You shouldn't be a rich old black man and be able to run for president, and that's why you are in that position. Right. You know what I mean? You take the money out of politics. That's the way you take the money out of politics or doom. And, we're in the latter right now. So with corporations and everything else, I feel like there's such a stranglehold. And then, so to bring this back to Trump, the way he was on the debate, he was arguing, well, the economy, I have made this great economy and everything else. But what he's really talking about is the market. And the market is not the economy. It is not, it will not be, I don't care how you try to tie the two, it's just not. They don't correlate.
Not to that implication at all, right? Like, it's, for example, like, this is, as far as economically, probably the shittiest year I've seen yet alive. And yet the stock market's doing fine. Fine. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Huge.
Yeah.
Huge. Is it huge?
Huge.
Right. So I think that's my biggest frustration. Is there are people that support Donald Trump that believe that he is doing the best thing for him, for him, her, family,
right.
everybody. But in the end, do you own stocks? Are you in the market? Well, if you're not in the market, well, the odds are you're probably not doing better. And then you go back to, okay, well, let's talk about jobs. Let's talk about, added jobs and everything else. Let's look at those jobs. What are those jobs? Those jobs aren't high-paying jobs. They're jobs.
Right.
And then you start looking at the wages and everything else and the stagnated pay. I mean, it's just there's so many, I feel, clear places where it is obvious that we, as the working middle class on down, is just taking it in the ass.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. That's all you got.
I'd say that's
interview over. We're done. Bring me my mojito. I want my mojito after the podcast. You know the rules.
God damn, do you know what goes into a mojito? That's a goddamn lot of work.
They're like crushed mint.
Oh, good.
They like crushed mint. I think they like put like a bump of Coke and some adrenochrome in there. I'm not sure. I'm no expert.
I know it's fancy, and I know the look you get when you order a mojito, only because I have ordered a mojito for somebody else and gotten the wrath of the bartender. So
I think you just gotta order it like in a very like smooth baritone, like, and for you, sir, I'll have a mojito.
A mojito.
I'll have a mojito. How large is your mojito glass, sir?
I want a tall.
Double mint. I like the mint.
Double mint.
Double mint.
Absolutely.
Double your pleasure. Double your fun. That's just science, Tyler. That's all that is.
Science. Oh, you want to talk about science? Let's not talk about science.
That's why I loved. I mean, I use love with finger quotes, but the other night, I think it was Joe Biden was like I believe in science. It's like, well, who the fuck doesn't believe in science? It's politics. You guys are just twisting science to your benefit. Like have you ever heard of a mad scientist before? Like we tend to think that like scientists are these like godly people where it's just like, oh, we trust the science. We trust the science. It's like, yeah,
well, science is a process. Anyone that knows what science is, I mean, but then it goes back to Carlin again. I'll butcher the quote, but it's basically, think about the average American, how stupid the average American is. And think half are dumber than that. It's like, when you put it that way, yeah, it's a mind-blowing thought.
I think that's one thing that maybe it's ignited such a fervor or a passion in people of this election cycle, is that if they can't convert you, right, and to be like, hey, this is why I'm choosing to vote this way, it's for X, Y, and Z, then they're going to go like full Westboro Baptist Church on you. Like they even have signs now. They just because they changed it from saying some Bible thumping homophobic slur on it to like world peace and stuff like that. If they're beating you over the head and screaming in your face, they're not really going to convince you. But it's not about convincing you at that point. It's about showing to their congregation, for lack of a better term, that like, oh, you guys think you're for the cause? This is how for the cause I am. This guy just said that he likes to hold the door open for his wife, so I beat him over the head with a baseball bat to teach him not to stick to traditional gender roles or whatever. It's so fucking bonkers, dude. It's so
tribalism,
stupid.
man. Tribalism.
It's totally tribal, man. And like again, if people would sort of detach themselves from this idea of, well, the only reason that somebody could view something like politics from a different perspective is because they're morally mirrored from me, right? They're like completely opposite. And like that's again, like, not to keep beating a dead horse, but like that's not the case, nor the way that you should go about viewing politics. I think that the right to choose what you do with your own body, and the right to go out and buy a boom boom stick to protect your house are fundamentally not the government's business. But I don't vote on that way. Like, again, like, it depends on like what we're talking about. Like in 2018, Trump wasn't on the ballot. You know what I mean? Joe Biden wasn't on the ballot, I don't think. No, yeah, they didn't do primaries then. It's been a long year.
Fucking shit, that's an understatement.
Yeah, right. But I still went out and voted, and almost, of course, with me kind of being like a bit of a libertarian minded, like almost everything I voted for as far as the amendments, like none of them, like all of them like passed or like failed to pass. So that was a little disheartening. So like I think it's more important to sort of, if you focus just on like, hey, what else is on the ballot other than just the president, then we can start to see some real change in America. But if all we're focused on is solely, again, like which team of assholes is going to walk us into the apocalypse, I mean, like we're still going to get to the apocalypse either way, But
absolutely, it all starts from the bottom.
Yeah,
it all starts from the bottom, and I mean, it's your local elections, it's your the things you're voting for locally, and then on up the line. The president obviously is the most polarized and the most in your face. But if you do take the time to read and to educate yourself on what's going on around you, the change starts at the bottom.
So what would you say some of your guiding principles are for how you vote? Like
how I vote, or how I would wish, because I look at it more of like a humanly type thing. What are my human type principles that I would want applied in government?
Right.
And that would be honesty and transparency. Those are my two biggest things. That truth shall set you free, and to be transparent about it. And people are afraid to be transparent, and I get that. Because a lot of things follow, a lot of uncomfortable moments follow transparency.
No doubt.
There's shame. There's there's all kinds of things that it's not the easy route to be and to strive for. And those are the things that I look for the most. And again, empathy. Empathy is another one that I'm a really big believer in. You need to be able to remove yourself from the situation and try to look at it from somebody else's point of view. You need to be able to understand that the world does not revolve around you. You are a grain of rice in the cosmos. You're just a speck. You're here for such a short, finite time, and all these things need to be respected. And so that's how I vote. Is I don't know, silly as that sounds.
Well, no, I mean it's you should. It's a better idea to have some sort of I guess you would say like a lofty goal for like how the world can be, than to just be like, well, I was raised Republican, my daddy was Republican, and that's how we just vote in this house, and we don't really let liberals in at the dinner table. So, Chauncey, whenever you and your friend are finished with supper, if you would kindly take your friend outside. I know how his mother Becky votes, and we ain't gonna have it in this household.
Well, my old man, he is a Republican, and he is a Fox News watcher. He is he's an old school type of man, and I respect the shit out of him. At the same time, I highly disagree with him on several points. So, and then, my mom, I would say, is more liberal. And then you get me, where I feel like I do fall kind of in between. And so I do think the way you're raised and brought up, and, your surroundings and the people you choose to be around and those things absolutely influence your ways of thinking. And people don't like to leave their comfort zone. And I feel like that's another there's so many variables and factors that weigh into the situation of America right now. And I think that is one of them, is everyone has been raised in a way, and a lot of people don't like to leave that comfortable bubble. And if you never leave that comfortable bubble, you're going to stay with what you know. And whatever you know is what you were brought up with.
Right.
And so if you were born Democrat, by God, you're going to be a Democrat. If you were born Republican, by God, you're going to be a Republican. Unless the group brings you in. And then there's a whole other dynamic of, switching sides and feeling part of being something bigger than yourself, and not realizing that you're not thinking for yourself, but you're brought into this group. And I mean, I see that on both sides.
Yeah. Well, it's I think it may have been Jordan Peterson who talked about that.
He's a beauty.
The way that we're supposed to develop is we start off as individuals, and then you have to develop some sort of social skills, so you find yourself in a group, right? Because you don't want to be the kid that can't socialize with all the other kids. It's right. Not a good determiner for success. But you want to evolve from the group to become an individual again, so you have autonomy and can think for yourself. And that's like kind of one of the scarier things is how folks won't even sort of like humor that they may be experiencing some sort of cognitive dissonance that they're just sort of turning a blind eye to. So for example, I'll at least defend the orange asshole with this one. So the very fine people moment, right? What was 2017? Charlottesville.
There's good people on both sides.
Yeah.
Fine people or
whatever. So that gets blasted out, and everyone's just like, what the fuck is that about? Now, I agree. What the fuck is that about? Now, the problem is that he's talking to a reporter for probably about the span of like a minute or two. Now, he says that, and then later on, I think it's about 45 seconds later or so, he reiterates and says it again and says, quote, "And I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists. They should be condemned totally," end quote. Now, the news doesn't...
I hate interrupting you. I'm sorry. Is it just, the white supremacy, he didn't, in the debates, he didn't, shut that down.
Okay, so here's what I'm going... Here's what I'm going to.
So that's why I interrupted you.
Right. Here, that's why I'm bringing it up. So, clearly, yeah, bad optics on the, what was it, stand by and stand back and stand by. Not good optics, Donald.
Not good.
Not good optics.
Not great, Dan.
Not good.
Yeah.
Slightly less bad than I would say probably Biden's. If you don't know if you're gonna vote between me and Trump, then you ain't black. I was like, oh God, Joe, like, what the fuck, dude? But Anywho, you can see people.
Oh, come on, that's just him being real. Oh, Jesus Christ!
But anywho, so what the debate looked like to me, again, with aside from bad optics, with this comment, is that the president has literally had to deal with the backlash from this since that Charlottesville hoax, right? Not that was a hoax. Not that Charlottesville was a hoax, but as far as the very fine people and how they chopped it up and put it out there, as far as
context.
Exactly.
Context is so important.
Yeah. So because of that, and people online have started making montage clips of Trump denouncing white supremacists, white supremacy, the KKK, Nazis, like all this stuff. And you can see as it goes on in the timeline, he starts getting more and more frustrated. To one interviewer, he says, "How many times do I have to do this for you guys to keep denouncing this?" So what I think it was, man, is that, again, this is just my observation and not trying to blindly defend him or anything, because, again, it's bad optics. But I think he was just being a smartass because Trump's an asshole, again. So if you look at the full context of what he said when Chris Wallace, I think that's the guy's name, asked him that question, the first words out of his mouth were, "Sure." Like, that was the first thing he said. He said, "Sure, I don't think it's," or he said, "Sure, I think it's more of a problem on the left than it is a right-wing thing, but who would you like me to condemn?" Like, that's what he said first. So, again, while he probably should have, and I use the word probably with a very strong underline, should have been an asshole back to the Chris Wallace and said, "How many times are you going to ask me this stupid question? Yes, of course I denounce white supremacists. Can we move on to something?"
He still hasn't done it.
Well, yeah, he did. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's a montage.
Has he?
Yeah, there's montages you can look up of Trump denouncing these groups. He even recently, though I know you'll disagree on the Antifa side of it, but he designated KKK and Antifa as domestic terrorist cell groups. In the same bill, he also pledged $500.
Baby. No, I might get
Here's $500. Get yourself something nice.
Nice cocaine. Maybe a Coney dog later.
How much is a Coca-Cola now? $500 here. Get you a Coca-Cola. $500 billion to historic black colleges and universities. So like these sort of things, again, like they're in there, but because they don't generate clickbait, it's not gonna get ratings. It's not gonna get views or shares if it's like, hey, Trump did really something wholesome, right? Instead, like, it's this ratings game, and I think he's pretty complicit with it as well. I think that because he knows how to get under their skin, so I can see him being like, oh, fuck it, like, it'll be good ratings. But again, very bad optics. But as far as the argument that he's never denounced white supremacy, I mean, that's not true. He's done it multiple times.
I never said that. I was just.
Yeah, not you.
And I know, but we're having this conversation, and it's just, this is where it's kind of like one of these things that, as being on opposite sides of support, how you see the side that you're supporting do something that just makes you cringe. And I mean, I have that, and I know you have that. So it's just one of those things that it's like, why? You have to determine what your cringe.
I think a good way to look at it, dude, is what is your cringe threshold, and what subject does it fall under? So, like, with some people, like, anything that has to do with Trump being an asshole or his rhetoric, like that doesn't sway me because I've been hearing this stuff for so long. You know what I mean? Now, his actions and his policies and who he appoints and what executive orders he signs or what he vetoes, these are things that I'll take interest in. But as far as watching two old codgers insult each other back and forth on a debate stage and call the other one racist, like neither one of their attacks hold much value for me other than it's wildly entertaining to watch two politicians try to say that they're more virtuous than another politician.
No, Biden, just shut up, man. Clown. And then to be praised for that. I'm thinking to myself, that was the softest, most moist comeback I've ever heard. Like, if you're really going to tell the motherfucker to shut up, tell him to fucking shut up. No. Not under your breath, like, oh, can you just shut up, man? Like, it was almost like a sigh. Like, no, you want him to shut up. Tell him to fucking shut up.
Yeah.
Look him dead in the eyes. Say, shut the fuck up. Let me say my piece. Then you can say your piece. Like, fuck. It drove me nuts. Have you ever seen Uncut Gems?
No, that's the Adam Sandler movie.
It's the Adam Sandler movie, right? So, the gambler, anything. But the movie, it gives you this uncomfortable feeling, basically from start to finish. You're just uncomfortable. You're anxiety. I mean, it really. It's not a great movie. It's a watchable movie, but I mean, it makes you feel uncomfortable all the way through that fucker. So that's how I felt through the debates. It was like I was watching Uncut Gems. I was just uncomfortable the entire time because I see Trump being Trump, and then I see Biden, like, not doing as well as I felt somebody could do. And so it was super frustrating for me.
See, I thought that Biden outperformed the expectations I had for him.
Really?
Within I think it was probably the first 10 minutes, I was sort of like sitting back like, oh my God, is Biden gonna, because he was already starting to like stutter and like.
He was having trouble.
Yeah. And I guess maybe his IV kicked in or something, like after that 10 minutes, because then like he started dishing out the zingers, as far as like, will you just shut up, man? He told him the only way he would find a suburb is if Donald Trump took a wrong turn. I was like, that's some good stuff.
that was okay. If we're talking zingers, that was the winner of the night. you wouldn't know a suburb if you took a wrong turn. It was a winner. That did hit well.
Yeah. So Biden overperformed my expectations. Like you said, Trump came out there and Trump was Trump, and I think towards the end of it, Biden tried being Trump, or at least playing on that kind of level, and then you had the moderator who. Seemingly, he wasn't keeping it together. It just sort of fell off the rails from the get-go. And then he starts kind of stepping in for Biden. And it's like, hey, bro, you can't be doing that. Biden's okay. He's fine. If he wasn't okay to do it, the DNC would not have put him up there on the stage. Trust that. You know what I mean? Like, they've invested in this man. They're going to make sure that their investment is good to go. Believe that. So I hope the next three, I hope the VP debate and the other two presidential debates will be a little bit more couth, I guess.
Absolutely. Professionalism. It's not just America watching this. It's the world.
Oh, yeah.
And to see this kind of unhingement is it's shit that we've never seen, man. 2020.
Yeah, it's what's really bizarre is like I'll see clips of other countries and like where the protests are going on there, and like I would see some stuff initially where they were tying them to like the American protests, like the George Floyd protests, and which they were protesting George Floyd in other countries, his death and everything. Mm-hmm. But they were protesting before George Floyd in those other countries. Like you had the Yellow Vest movement in Paris, and you've got Belgium. It's going on. There's protests going on there.
I'm gonna butcher it. It's one of them bees,
Belarus.
Belarusium.
Beljerusalem. There we go. But I mean, like some. I think in England, they had like something. This was just like in the past week, like tens of thousands of people protesting the COVID lockdowns. Apparently in the UK, they're like really, really bad. I'm not sure how they're doing in Wisconsin. Georgia's pretty open. Like, it's not Florida open, but like we're for the most part, like people here are kind of like living normal.
So yeah, I mean, I'd say we're still living normal. You know, there's places, you know, the grocery store, most of them require masks, and you know that's mandated from the corporations and everything else.
Right.
We had a huge discussion about sending our daughter to school. She is 5. She just turned 5. And, you know, we thought it was more important to, you know, have a social aspect for her and you know, take that away from her wasn't the best choice. So we did decide to put her in school. We put her in school. She was there for 2 weeks, and then they've now shut the school down. So now we're doing the whole digital learning thing. So it's super frustrating because I know people that have had COVID confirmed. I know people that, you know, have had people that have died. I don't know anyone personally that has died, but you know, I one of the I might get a little emotional talking about it because it's super. One of my friends, his child is 6 and has been battling cancer off and on since he was 2. He got COVID, so you know, having them underlying issues, and then on top of that, you know, kid's a fighter. He's still he's making it, but it is one of them things that when I talk about, it is super frustrating to me that there are many people that just write it off as, you know, oh, it's going to go away after the election, or it's this, or it's that, and look at everything that we did for preparation, and, you know, there was, you know, everything that we did for these hospitals, and then the hospitals were empty, and those kind of things. It's just, you don't want people dying, man. You know, it's like 200,000 people plus, you know, and it's, we'll write that off, but it's just, those are people, man. Those are family. They're grandparents, they're fathers, they're, you know, mothers, sisters, brothers.
Well, and plus, because like nobody knew what the hell was going on. You know what I mean? Like we started hearing about like this back in like December, January, and then it was just, at least even what I thought, it was just well, it's an election year. They do this every election year with a epidemic scare, you know, and when you look back at like every election cycle, every year you can see like, well, there's a new disease, and this was the first time where you had like an overflow of information come out, and then you had people shutting down information that was dissenting, right? Which that still bugs me about some of these tech giants like YouTube that were like, they're censoring videos on things now they're showing that actually can battle COVID, like hydroxychloroquine, and the other one, the weird one, well, like the UV light, that they'll put something inside of you and it'll shine UV light. And like Trump talked about it like, I think like 6 months ago or so, and everybody's like, that's the stupidest thing.
Things like that, because I mean, he didn't say it properly, number one.
I don't think you should be taking medical advice from a game show host, for starters.
Well,
you know,
the hydroxychloroquine, I still haven't seen. I mean, see, I'm so out of. I pulled back hard on all of this, to be honest with you, because from everything, all my research, and I research in the finger quotes, you know, the things that I did to try to educate myself on what the fuck was going on. I mean, the hydroxychloroquine and everything else, I mean, it didn't show what it needed to show for me. I don't think hydrochloroquine was the answer, or we'd have an answer right now, because by God, Trump would be hailed as a fucking hero if he had that in his back pocket.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's one of those things that, where you get your information from, is so paramount, and that's where the alternate realities come in, right? You got the Fox News type of folk, and then you have the mainstream media and the legacy medias that you speak of, and everything else. And I mean, they're all selling you something.
Yeah,
and,
I think the thing that was most concerning for me, though, it's this notion of trust us, we're the experts, or trust us, listen to the experts. And I would see videos of doctors and other people that are on the front line that have been showing that, like, early onset, if you take this as sort of prophylactic, I think is the term, preventative measure.
Preventative.
Yeah, then it looks like it just sort of like deals with it and it never gets worse. So you can catch it, develop the antibodies for it, treat it, and then you're fine. There's a buddy of mine, Biscuit. He had some family members that all contracted COVID, and everybody but one person in the family went and got treated early on, and this guy said that, oh no, he felt fine, and he didn't need to go see a doctor or anything like that, and he's no longer here because by the time that he went to the doctor, his oxygen levels, I think, were like down at like 40% or something like that, like dangerously low. If we can have folks on YouTube talking about healing crystals, talking about flat Earth, talking about ancient aliens, talking about how Marxism has never been tried before, we just need to Americanize it. If we can have all these ideas that are controversially false, right? Then I think that whenever you have tech giants that started suppressing people that were uploading content that showed, like, hey, we've got some data here that, again, like, we all want to figure out how to fix this and fight it and get back to, even if we can't get back to normal, just get back on the road at least. Again, I'm not a scientist. I don't have any clear-cut answers or even solutions to it. All I know is that there's some sort of trickery that's going on, and the only way that they would shut the country down for this long and in this manner is if somebody can profit off of it, right? And I think that this is arguably a way for the governments of the world with this crisis to sort of redraw the battle plan going into the 21st century, because there's a new world. It is a brand new world, dude, and I think it's a rather exciting time to be alive, personally.
Well, it's definitely interesting. We'll give it that.
For sure. So if you could, because we're about to get to end here of the battery life on this device.
Oh, no.
We still got a little bit of time, but if you could, because there's going to be some folks that listen to this that are, they're not decided, or they think they're, going to vote Republican. If you could offer any sort of insight as to why Biden would be the choice, what would you tell them, or where would you point them?
I would point them to say that Trump isn't the choice. I wouldn't talk about Biden at all. I'd talk about Trump, and I'd talk about the history of Trump. If you do enough digging and looking back, you'll see that the guy is a fucking con man. That he is a walking, talking, breathing shyster of a man. The motherfucker even would call the Wall Street Journal, right? I think it was the Wall Street Journal, as somebody else, pretending to be somebody else.
Yeah, so
to talk about how amazing the guy was. If you look at, if you give Trump credit, you can. And you give him credit for being, living in an alternate reality, his own reality, that he made reality. you got to give credit for that.
Mm-hmm.
Like to be able to do that, it's just it still boggles my mind. But to actually believe anything that comes out of his mouth as truth, I don't see it because of all the examples of lies and or latching on to things that are misleading or half-truths. The list is literally a mile long from China. it's
China. I want to be accurate.
China, yeah, it's the Chinese virus. And okay, and another thing, you know what? Well, I'm just gonna totally just take a big fat shit on Trump. It is the fact that he there's no accountability, and you know, back to what you were talking about. We were talking, you know, the honesty and transparency, those type of things.
Right.
Owning your shit. Own your shit. You make a fucking mistake, you fucking own it. I fucked up. I learned from it. I move on. Those type of things. The man is incapable of that. It is everybody else's fault. It's, you know, it's China, or it's this, or it's that. It's the mainstream media. It's he will find I don't think he's taking credit for anything other than, you know, flattery. And it's just there are so many things wrong with that man that I just, he literally is an embodiment of everything I hate in humans. and you know, the fucked up thing is I had no feelings about the guy one way or another. And
right.
It wasn't the mainstream media feeding my mind of Orange Man bad or anything else. It was literally my outside perspective because, I mean, like I said, from the beginning, I was like, fuck it. Like, yo, you know, if you can't hop on board with it, you know, not my president, like, what the fuck? Are you fucking retarded? He is your fucking president. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, where do you live?
Yeah, okay, so, like, that line of thinking literally makes no sense.
Yeah, I guess if you're French or Congolese, yeah, he's not your president, but if you live in Utah or Maryland.
Right. Yeah. You got crabs, and Trump's your president. So, anyways, to sum that shit up, he is a fucking terrible human being, and I don't think terrible human beings are as possible to do good things as you believe. And I like your cup half full outlook on it. But I just...
It's all I have, Tyler. It's all I have is
you know
what's left in this cup. That's all I have. A literal cup here in my hand. This is not anything I drink out of. This is the hope of the world. It's right here. And what's going to happen is... Yeah, what sadly is my clumsy ass is going to drop the cup. And then that'll be the sign that, like, it's over. It's the, you know, line in the sand. Well, I mean, I don't think the world is gonna, like, you know, burn, or folks are gonna burn it down just yet. But there's supposedly some October surprises that are coming from both camps.
Oh,
both Trump and Biden.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's I mean, we'll see. You know, we'll see how interesting it gets. But
it's going to get a lot more fucked up between now and election day, that may even, you know, supposedly be months longer.
Yeah. That's the my biggest qualm with the mail-in voting is actually not anything to do with the matter of how easy it would be to manipulate that vote. But that's not even I guess, really the crux of it. It's that we need to find out on election day who wins the election. Like,
I agree.
That's what it's all about. I got no problem with absentee ballots. Like you want to vote early? Vote early. You should totally do that. But, like, I don't think that trying out a new process in the midst of an election year, in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of old man winter versus old man summer on a debate stage is really the time to do it.
To be honest, we could go on for, literally on and on and on and on and on about, mail-in voting on down the line. It's just, there's so much going on. There's so much to pay attention to. There's so many things that you should be informed on. And, it's just so much for one person to do. And so to be able to have this outlet, I can't thank you enough for having me on. I'm flattered.
Oh, dude, you gotta come back, man. You gotta.
Hey, I'll come back anytime you want me.
Fuck
bud.
yeah, dude.
Yeah, to be able to share the ideas and to be able to just have a conversation that constructive. That's what we need. That's what we need.
I agree 100%.
There's not enough of it.
No, there's not. Well, Tyler, thank you so much for coming on the show. And, like, dude, I love you to death, man. You're a great dude. And I'm so thankful that, you're a part of my life and have been, man. So, real talk.
I had a blast, and I won't, bore everyone with how awesome you are, because everyone already knows, man. You're a goddamn beauty.
Well, same
Fucking
to you, man.
Treasure.
Same to you. Well, dude, just for the record, I think you should vote for whoever you want to vote for, and no matter who you vote for, that is your choice. Nobody should shame you for how you vote, and either which way, I'm still going to talk to you and have you on my show, no matter who you vote for. So,
amen, man. I appreciate that.
Fuck yeah.
Also, at the same time, I'm not even against people that shame. To be honest, if you want to shame me for doing what I feel is right, fuck you. You know what I mean? And then it goes back. We didn't even get to talk about free speech. Free speech is another one. Political correctness, another one we could have dove into. It's like with these things, they should not be a dying thing. Free speech should be real. Having political correctness is bullshit. You should be able to say what the fuck you want, and somebody should tell you you're a fucking idiot if they don't agree with it. Like, those are fundamental rights that we should have.
Yeah, 100% agree, man.
100%. All right, I know we're kicking out of here. I love you, man.
Love you too, bro. Later, y'all.
Hey, peace out.